Hello, everybody. Welcome. We're just going to give a couple minutes here to make sure everybody can join. Happy Mother's Day to all of you mothers out there and all of you that have a mother. And I'll also mention as we get going here, this is our second ever webinar. We're using some new features today that we're going to be trying out. So appreciate your patience if any of them don't totally work. We'll do our best. And I'll mention it on the next slide, but if you guys can find the polls feature, should be on your top right, I think. You can answer some of our questions like, oh, looks like some of you already have. Where are you visiting from? Have you been to Alaska or McCarthy before? That's awesome to hear from you. And I apologize, on the where are you visiting from, we were only given 5 options, so I couldn't list every country or part of the world. I understand that other is a pretty big area there.
Yeah, if you're one of those others, feel free in the chat to say where you're coming from.
Yeah. Looks like we're going to have some return visitors. I hope we can help answer your questions, and feel free to participate in the chat too. If you see someone's question that you know how to answer already, we'd love to hear, kind of get a second opinion. Can we get going?
Yeah, and hi to those couple that just joined us. We're just waiting a little bit, let some other folks join. But we are going to go ahead and get started here. So I'll let Anya kick it off.
Oh, you got a fellow Floridian.
Oh, nice.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. And again, happy Mother's Day. Thanks for joining us today on such a special day. I'll quickly introduce myself. My name is Anya. I'm one of the owners of St. Elias Alpine Guides, and I'm our expedition coordinator. I organize all of our multi-day trips, so backpacking, rafting, skiing, climbing, mountaineering in the park.
And I'm Samantha, or Sam. I'll answer to either. And I'm our office manager. So I also do a lot of logistics coordinating for our multi-day trips. And I specialize on our day trips. So I'm really going to be able to help answer any trip questions you have, and also any of those logistics questions. Occasionally I get to guide. And I also live out here. So I've done 8 summer seasons now and 4 winters.
Sam braves the winter out here with how many neighbors?
Not very many neighbors, maybe 2 neighbors, but 20 to 40 Valley residents. So
yeah,
pretty quiet.
She's the real deal local between the 2 of us, and hopefully we'll be able to, bring that local expertise to our webinar today. I'll talk a little bit about our company, St. Elias Alpine Guides, or SEAG for short. We've been around for over 40 years. We're kind of the premier guide service in this area. Our founder, Bob Jacobs, way back in the 70s, he thought Denali was getting way too crowded. So he came out here in search of, the real Alaska, kind of that truest, wildest wilderness area. And he found it here even before it was a national park, actually. Back then it was just him and his partner, and eventually a couple guides joined the crew. Today we've grown the company all the way up to roughly 40, 45 guides a summer, which is definitely a big crew, but we're still a very small business. Each guide that works for us is very unique, and everyone does something a little bit different. This allows us to offer a huge variety of adventures: day trips, multi-day adventures, rafting, ice climbing, and we're actually just finishing up our ski and mountaineering season. Our team is currently on a summit attempt for Mount Drum today.
Awesome. So, oh, sorry, I'm a little turned around. What can we expect today? Basically, all things McCarthy Kennecott. What is it and where is it? Who visits and should you visit? What is there to do once you get here? Spoiler, there is a lot to do once you get here. And when's a good time to visit? And how much time should you carve out of your itinerary to visit? That's a really big question we get. We're such an off the beaten path small town, so a lot of times people don't expect there to be as much as there is here, but we'll get into that a lot more later. And how do you get here? That's also a very, very big one, and we'll get into the nitty-gritty of that and help you guys out.
Based on our run through earlier, we think we have about 30 to 45 minutes of talking to do and slides to present, and then we'll open the floor to Q&A. So I'm thinking 45 minutes to an hour total of your time today. This session is going to be recorded, and after tuning in, you'll get an email with a link to the recorded session if you'd like to reference that later. We also have some resources for you. Kind of in the same area where you found the polls, you should see handouts. Our big handout is going to be our local map of McCarthy and Kennecott. We'll go over it with you a little bit later in the webinar, but you can download that at any time. Keep in mind, it's our 2024 map. We're updating it for this year, and we'll have that new 2025 map available in paper or digitally when you show up to visit here in person. And I also have a couple links to our website. I'm not totally sure how these are going to pop up for you, but excuse me, one of them is a link to our transportation and lodging page. I can also direct you there on our website if you're having trouble finding that link. That page is going to have all that nitty-gritty that we're going to talk about of how to get here and where to stay. You do not need to take copious notes today. You can reference that website. It'll have all the links you need for all the different companies that provide that transportation and lodging. And I also have another one that I'm going to throw out there, I think now, which is a link to our FAQ page. Our FAQs, we'll go over some of them today. I'm sure you'll ask some of them in our Q&A session, but again, in case you're not taking notes or don't want to, you can always reference our FAQ page. It often holds, answers to questions you didn't even realize you had. All right. Oh, one thing I should mention is that it's just Sam and I here today, so we'll do our best to keep up with your chat. In case we miss something, forgive us. We'll catch up with you in just a sec. All right. So where are we going today? We're headed to Wrangell St. Elias National Park and Preserve. This is the largest national park in the United States, and it's roughly 300 to 400 miles or 500 to 600 kilometers from Anchorage and Fairbanks, the two biggest cities in Alaska. And in just a second here, I'm going to pull up my state map to show you of exactly where we're talking about here. Okay, you can see the whole state now. hopefully. This map is from alaska.org. It's a really great resource in general as you're planning your Alaska trip. On this map, you can see all of the national parks and preserved wilderness areas in Alaska. In addition to this, there's also a bunch of national forests, state parks, a whole bunch of other beautiful, gorgeous public land in Alaska to enjoy and explore. If you follow the Cook Inlet, you'll reach Anchorage, which I'll point out with my mouse. I think you should be able to see it right here. Anchorage, it's not geographically central to Alaska, but it does tend to be kind of the hub where all roads end. And it's usually easiest to travel to other places in Alaska coming in and out of Anchorage. For some of you, depending on where your travels take you, you might fly into or already be in Fairbanks, which is kind of in the center of the state up here. You can see Denali National Park, really popular, one of the most popular national parks in Alaska, here kind of just north of Anchorage, a couple hours north. And then if you go east from Anchorage towards the Canadian border, you'll see enormous Wrangell St. Elias National Park way out here. Now, what this map doesn't show is kind of a second area here on the Canadian side that's almost as large, which is Kluane National Park and Preserve. And together they are part of the largest protected wilderness on planet Earth. Okay, some of you said the map is a little too small. Let me kind of zoom in here. We're just doing an overview. So just kind of looking at some of our major areas: Anchorage, Fairbanks, Wrangell St. Elias. And as I zoom in a little bit more, I'll show you some of the road systems here. Again, we'll talk about transportation in more detail, but you can see that there is a highway that takes you from Anchorage to Glen Allen and eventually into Wrangell St. Elias. There's also a highway from Fairbanks that takes you to Wrangell St. Elias. There's also highways that connect Wrangell St. Elias to Denali National Park. And if you're driving through Canada or even from the lower 48 up through Canada, you'll inevitably take this highway up to Tok, and then you'll drive along the northwest side of the national park and can get in that way. Just a little lay of the land, big picture overview. We'll get more into transportation in just a sec. All right. What makes this place so special? Well, as I mentioned, the size and scope of this enormous landscape is pretty remarkable. The park itself is about 13.2 million acres large, or that's just over 200,000 square miles. For comparison, that's about 6 or 7 times the size of Yellowstone National Park. There are 4 different mountain ranges in this park that crisscross the landscape, and within that, even more sub-ranges, including 9 out of the 16 tallest mountains in the US. A lot of high elevation terrain. The wilderness is also what sets this place apart. Unlike other national parks that you may have been to, or even some of the other national parks in Alaska, this one is almost completely undeveloped. You'll see the town of McCarthy has some trails in it, and another area on the north side of the park, Nebezna, has some trails out there, but the rest is really just raw and untouched wilderness. The glaciers are also very unique to this place. There are other glaciers in Alaska, but 60% of Alaska's glacial ice is actually within this national park. That includes some of the longest and largest glaciers in North America. There's so many of them that literally 1/3 of the park is covered in glacial ice. And we're very lucky in that right in the town of McCarthy and Kennecott, we have access to the Root and Kennecott glaciers very easily. So although McCarthy and Kennecott might not be that easy to access, the glaciers out here are some of the easiest to access in Alaska. The history is also really unique out here. You can see the photo that we've chosen here of the mill building in Kennecott. The entire town of Kennecott was an old mining town from about 100 years ago, turn of the century time, and it was completely abandoned in the 1930s. It's really, really well preserved, and now it's actually a National Historic Landmark preserved by the National Park Service. Really, really fascinating history of frontier life, and certainly for anybody mechanically inclined. Lots of really cool, well-preserved old machinery here too. That's Kennecott. Kennecott is a little bit more of a museum town. There are some people that live there, but McCarthy is kind of where more of the community is centered around. McCarthy also sprung up around the same time as Kennecott, and today it's a really small town might even be too big of a word for it, village, and it's a really authentic Alaskan community. Everybody that lives out here is living completely off the grid or completely in the bush, like Samantha over here, year round. And when you're coming out to see real Alaskans living in real Alaska, this is really, really it. Really cool, authentic community. And then, of course, with so many mountain ranges, mountains, and wilderness to play in, many call McCarthy and Kennecott the adventure capital of Alaska. Lots and lots to do out here.
Great. So who is it for? That's a tough question to ask because it's kind of for everybody, but that looks different depending on who you are. But in general, it's great for solo travelers. There's a lot that you can do on your own here. We offer a lot of group trips that solo travelers are more than welcome to join on to. Couples can find a lot to do and explore here. We get a lot of honeymooners, and that's always fun to be a part of. Occasionally, people get married on the glacier. Very exciting and great place to do that. And small groups as well. And small groups often look like families. So a lot of families like to come out, do a big road trip. RV travel is really big for Alaska. And I know a lot of people tend to have questions about their RV and getting out to McCarthy. So we'll talk about that more later. And large groups like to come out as well. So that can look like a Boy Scouts group, a church group, anything like that. So if you are a part of a group and you think it'd be great to bring your folks out here, it can be done, trust us. So those groups can be made up of different ages. So young and old. A key piece to those who are on the younger side or the older side is that mobility is really important out here. So pretty much everything in our park is going to be walking based. Even visiting through the town of Kennecott, like Anya had mentioned earlier, that historic town, that is all walking based. There's very little assistance there. And so there are hills, a lot of stairs that you have to manage. So it's important to make sure that that's all within your ability. If you go on a guided trip, our guides are very ready and able to help you. So keep that in mind too. And history buffs as well. So with that mining history, there are pieces of that all over the park. And so there's a lot that you can explore and learn about by doing one of our tours, or even by going through the different buildings that are in Kennecott. The Park Service has refurbished a lot of those buildings and put up really good signs for you to learn about how people came out here. Photographers can find a lot to inspire them from those historic buildings to the landscapes that you're going to see. and occasionally wildlife if it cooperates. There's a lot to see and take photos of. Even if you're not a photographer, we all have phones. You'll look like a photographer. The landscape really does well for you out here. And adventurers, pretty much everybody who comes out here is adventurous, and adventure looks a little different to everybody. We have people come out here who want to go on the most extreme adventure they can, and they're out there now on the mountaineering trip. And then we have folks who adventure looks a little different. Adventure to them is going up that steeper hill to get to the top of the mill building, and going down through that, historic mill building where the stairs are steep and you're having to duck to get to the next level. So there is something for everyone out here, and we're definitely ready to help you find that. All right, so here is some of the stuff that you can do. Again, that historic Kennecott town tour, that is a 2-hour history tour, and we're the concessionaires for this tour. So we're the only ones who have access to some of the buildings that are closed to the public. So that's an important note. A lot of people think it'll be the Park Service, but it'll be through us. So it's that 2-hour history tour. Again, we walk through the town site. You're going to learn about what it was like to live and work here. And your guide is going to be interpreting all the different buildings you're seeing, making it really engaging for you. The main goal is to get inside of that mill building, though. And that's what you see in that back right corner of that Kennecott town picture. And we get to go down through all the different levels. That's where you get to see a lot of the old machinery that's in there and learn the technical side of the copper milling process. So really interesting for everyone. We have a lot of people hesitant to do that tour. Why can't I just do it myself? Can I just learn through going through the different buildings? And almost every time, once they do it, they're really, really glad they did. So really encourage you to do that. It's just extremely informative and interesting for everybody who comes through. If you're looking to get a little further out, we've got our route glacier activities. We've got a couple different options there, from half glacier to ice climbing, and we'll talk about that more on the next slide. There's a lot to discuss there. And we've also got some alpine hikes. So we can go up into the alpine, and there are some historic bunkhouses up there that are still standing in different degrees. And that can be really great to have a guide for. Those trails are open to the public, so plenty of people hike those on their own. Maybe you want to spend the day with just your family, not being guided. You're welcome to do that on those trails. Why it might be nice to have a guide is if you're nervous about bears, your guide is just going to be a little bit more equipped and knowledgeable on how to handle a bear interaction. They've also got a lot of interpretive knowledge on the flora and fauna you're seeing along the way. And once you're at the top with that those historic bunkhouses, and also they'll be your biggest cheerleader. These alpine hikes are pretty steep and tiring, so they can kind of let you know when you are close to a little bit of a rest. All right, so next on that bottom left corner, we've got flight seeing. We don't offer flight seeing tours through us, but we partner with Wrangell Mountain Air. That is a local air taxi, and they have some of the best bush pilots in the state, and they're extremely knowledgeable on the terrain that they fly through and are very happy to share the information about what you're seeing along the way. So that is a great way to get a sense of the scope of the park if you're not able to go into the backcountry on a trip. So definitely recommend that for you as well. If you're interested in water activities, or maybe you have some mobility issues and still want to adventure, we've got a lake paddle for you that happens at the toe of the Kennecott Glacier. And you can see there, most people hear glacier, they expect to see white ice. The Kennecott Glacier is covered with a loose rock called surface moraine. So it's going to look a little bit more like a moonscape down there. So it's still really interesting to explore. You get great valley views, but a little bit less active for those who might have, especially leg problems, knee problems, and can't do a bigger hike. Rafting is similar. That lake paddle I mentioned is more of a half-day activity, so also works for a shorter time frame. Rafting, on the other hand, is a full-day activity, and it is whitewater rafting, but more like class 2, class 3 rapids. We start in McCarthy and go about 17 river miles into the backcountry. So a lot of folks who are short on time or maybe are working within a tighter budget, enjoy doing that raft and flight see, because it's a great way to get into the backcountry without paying for 2 flights, one flight into the backcountry and one to get back out. This way you're rafting and getting to see that true wilderness along the way. And then where that raft ends, there is no vehicle access. And so we have a bush plane that comes to pick us up and bring us back to McCarthy. All right, so here are those glacier activities I was talking about. All of our glacier activities are going to go down the Route Glacier Trail. And this is a 2-mile trail that starts out of Kennecott and goes right to the toe of the Route Glacier. It's a pretty standard trail. The start of it is going to be over a pretty well-maintained trail maintained by the Park Service, rock underfoot. There are some, hills up and down, creek crossings with a little bridge, great for photo ops. The most challenging part is the last quarter mile of the hike. That is where it starts to actually descend to the glacier. A lot of people think they're going to have to climb up a steep hill to access the glacier, because you think, glacier, you're going to be up in the mountains. But our glaciers that we hike on are actually valley glaciers. So they spill down into the valley floor, make it a lot easier for us to access, thankfully. But that last quarter mile, it's going to be a little bit steeper of a descent with loose rock underfoot. So we take that pretty slow. So if, maybe you are a hiker, but you're a little older, you have a knee replacement that you feel good on, but you want to be able to take things slow, we can do that. We're very, very used to that. So don't let that deter you. If you have more questions about your ability for a hike, feel free to call us or email us anytime, and we can give you more details on that. But that's about a quarter mile is that last bit. And then you're at the Route Glacier. So once you're at the Route Glacier, what are you going to do? Depends on what you want to do, depends on your adventure level. So we've got a half day or a full day glacier hike. And all of our activities include any of the technical gear. So crampons are going to be really important to have on the glacier, and they're provided when you go on a tour with us. The half day glacier hike versus a full day glacier hike. On the surface, the main differences are the mileage and the time that you're out there. So both start at 9 o'clock. The half day glacier hike typically ends between 2 and 3, so about 5 to 6 hours. And then the full day glacier hike gets back to our office between 5 and 6. So more like 8 hours or so. And aside from that, though, people are like, what more am I going to see? Is it really worth it to do a full day? And it just depends what you want to see out there. Some people just want to see the highlights. They want to get out there, get some really great photos and learn some basic things about the area. The half day glacier hike is great for that. There's 2 miles on the trail and then another mile or so on the glacier itself. So for that day, you're going to hike about 5 to 6 miles altogether. Group interests can change where you go on the glacier. And for our half day glacier hike, we can have a group of about 8 people to one guide. So if 4 people just want to, sit and take photos and the other 4 are really interested in going farther, there will have to be some compromises there, but you'll still get to see a lot of interesting stuff out there. The full day glacier hike, again, you're hiking that same Route Glacier Trail. So you're doing those 2 miles out. You're going to be able to get a lot farther out on the glacier since you have more time. So that is going to look like 4 to up to 6 miles on the glacier, depending on your ability level. So 8 to 11 miles altogether, typically on our full day glacier hike. And the main difference on our full day, it's a lot more exploratory. So for that half day glacier hike, again, we're wanting to take you to some good key features. But on the full day, if you see something off in the distance you want to explore, just let your guide know and they can take you there as long as the terrain allows. Blue pools are a big question. So you see right below, there's that blue pool jump. In the top right corner, did everyone see that picture there, that really beautiful blue pool with some little legs sticking out? That is a blue pool jump. So these blue pools kind of like to play tricks on us, and they change each season where they're at. Even within the season, they'll change where they're at. So we can't guarantee you'd be able to see one on a half-day glacier hike, but with more time and to explore a full-day glacier hike, you can almost always make it there and have time to jump in if you're interested. Yes, it is basically freezing. And so we do recommend having something to change out of if you want to do that, but it is well worth the experience. You warm up really quickly when you get out of the water, even on a cold, rainy day. It's worth doing if you have any interest in doing that. All right, so next question, do I need a guide? I've been talking about these trips through the scope of having a guide, with us. And really you do need a guide. It is strongly encouraged, not required though. The trail, again, is pretty accessible for everyone, but once you get on the glacier, you're going to want to have the right equipment and the right knowledge on how to navigate that kind of terrain. So it is strongly encouraged that you have a guide. It also just makes it more enjoyable for you. We have had people go out on their own and then stop by our office on the way back and say, it was really beautiful, but I wish I was able to find out a little bit more about, the glacier and the makeup of it. That's a key aspect of all of our tours, is that there's going to be an educational aspect where you learn about what you're seeing along the way. So it's nice to have someone for that in such a new area.
Before we move on,
yeah.
Leslie just asked a great question of, do you recommend trekking poles for the route glacier hikes?
Yeah, Leslie, that's a great question. So they can be helpful on the trail specifically, but on the glacier, we actually don't recommend them. So if you choose to bring them on the trail portion, just make sure they're collapsible and you can store them in your pack for the glacier hike. And the reason the glacier portion, they're not helpful is they can stick in the ice and throw you off balance. And so it's just better to rely on your feet. If there's an area where you are feeling a little uncomfortable, that's where your guide can be a great asset. I've acted as a crutch in some areas before. So yes, on the trail, but no on the glacier to trekking poles. Yeah, great question. Awesome. So then we've got our ice climbing. You can see a little preview of that in that bottom right corner. That is what kind of a standard day of ice climbing looks like. Here, the goal is of the day, it's a full day, so it starts at 9, ends closer to 6, is ice climbing and learning those techniques to, successfully scale a wall. So we start on a vertical wall of ice like you see below, and your guide is going to give you instructions and kind of encouragement as you climb that wall to get to the top. And then you will slowly be lowered back down to do it again or to wait while someone else in your group goes. For this hike or for this tour, we typically have about 5 people to one guide. So you're climbing, you're taking a break, you're climbing. And we like to move locations so that things get a little bit more challenging as you go as well. One of the key areas we like to go to is called a Mulan. And this is a giant hole in the ice that goes straight down. So you are lowered down into the hole of ice, and then you get to climb your way back out. It's a very cool experience. You're basically inside of the glacier. It's otherworldly. So if you are a little bit more adventurous and are debating between the full day and ice climbing, I'd say if you are like to be a little bit more active, ice climbing is a great way to do that. If you're interested in the educational side of the glacier, the full day glacier hike is a little bit better for you. Anything you want to add on ice climbing? Anya is an ice climbing guide, so she got maybe a little more info.
I'd say it's a really strenuous activity. You use a lot of leg and arm strength on this one. But the day is really designed for beginners. So no climbing experience of any kind is required. Most people have never ice climbed before. If you have ice climbed before, or you are an experienced climber, you're welcome to join our group tours, but all of these trips are also available on a private basis. And for experienced climbers or even experienced ice climbers, I recommend a private trip where it's just you and the guide. you can focus on going to more challenging terrain kind of right off the bat. And if you have climbed ice, it's probably been water ice or a frozen waterfall. Glacial ice is going to be totally different. The shapes that it creates are totally different, and the texture of it is very different. So even if you've done it before, I recommend trying it out on the glacier.
Yeah, James asked, is ice climbing done on the full day hike or is it a separate day? Good question. It's a separate day. So it's a completely different activity from the full day glacier hike.
Stoked for you, Christina. You're going to have a great time.
All right. So next glacier activity that's gaining popularity is ice cave exploration. And this is one of our most strenuous activities. It is partially on a trail, but eventually you go off trail on a very, very steep descent that's often more like a scramble. You know, some people prefer to butt scooch down the hill because it's quite steep. But once you're inside the caves, you can see kind of bottom left corner, it is like you're underwater. It's quite magnificent, but this activity is not for everybody. So even though you might want to get that picture of the cave, it might not be worth getting down there for. Our website has a lot of information on some of the hazards involved with it, and we're happy to give you more information over the phone too. But it's a pretty spectacular trip to do. Sorry, just reading a question down here. So Dominic is asking, what is the difference between the Route Glacier Trail half day or full day glacier hike? And the Route Glacier Trail is the same between the two hikes. I believe that's your question, but correct me if I'm misunderstanding. So on the half day glacier hike, the full day glacier hike, and on ice climbing, you're going to hike all 2 miles of the Route Glacier Trail to get to the edge of the Route Glacier.
And the Route Glacier Trail is open to the public. It's a maintained Park Service trail. It starts in the town of Kennecott, ends at the glacier's edge or right up where you get onto the white ice. So if you don't want to do an actual glacier hike with us, or you just want to go out there on a really nice hike, you don't have time, or like I said, don't want to get on the ice itself, you can totally do that trail on your own. It is in bear terrain, but it's the most popular trail in town. So it's heavily trafficked. You can hike with a bear spray. Some people, we don't even bring bear spray on our trips. It's somewhat uncommon to see bears out there, but it's a great trail to just hike on your own, super scenic. And it is required or part of any of our half day, full day, and ice climb tours to access that white ice.
And we've got one more activity focused question that we'll go through, and then any others that we get, we'll just save for the Q&A since we're almost done with this section. So a couple questions. Are Route and Kennecott two different glaciers? They are. There's the Route Glacier and then the Kennecott Glacier. They're both within the Kennecott Valley. And the Kennecott Glacier, we don't hike on. It's not very fun. But we do hike on it for our multi-day trips. But for our day trips, we go to the Route Glacier. And that's the beautiful white ice that you're seeing in all the photos on this slide. And our ice caves in or around the Route Glacier only. Ice caves often also kind of have a mind of their own, but there are a couple along the Route Glacier. And then does the full day glacier hike touch ice caves as well? No, they are completely different activities. The full day glacier hike, you can see cave-like features. The glacier changes each year as it melts and kind of moves down the valley. So the features are going to vary. And occasionally there can be ice tunnels that you're able to walk through or an opening that you can go inside. But those features aren't necessarily the true caves that we go into on the ice cave exploration. So they're a little bit different.
And we'll show you on a map a little bit later on, kind of, it might be easier to see the Kennecott and Route glaciers on the map.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, can I do all these activities in one day? And the answer is no. You would want to do these on separate days. And it's not uncommon for folks to do a glacier hike and ice caves because they are in different locations. I didn't quite make that clear. The ice caves are not, again, on the surface of the glacier. So you can get a lot of information from both activities and a totally different experience. And ice climbing, a lot of folks will then do the full day glacier hike so that they're getting to explore more of the glacier and then get a day of climbing as well. So those pair pretty well together.
You will see some overlapping terrain, of course. And if you only have time for one full day, the choice would be between a full day glacier hike or ice climbing. They can't be combined because ice climbing requires a lot more specific equipment and time to set up those ropes and anchors and stuff out there. So it's either or. All right, let's talk a little bit about the backcountry. You know, really, McCarthy Kennecott, if you look at it, once you get here, we live in the woods. And by most people's standards, even our front country is kind of like the backcountry already. It doesn't take much to access that true wilderness. I mean, it's all around us all the time. You just got to, walk a few yards or a couple miles out from the cabins or lodge that you're staying in, and you're really out there. But obviously the park is really big. McCarthy and Kennecott are right in the center of it. To access a lot of that other farther away terrain, we partner with Wrangell Mountain Air, or in other areas of the park, other air taxis to fly into another location in the wilderness on a bush plane. Bush planes are going to have big fat tires that can land on uneven surfaces. And so there's a couple locations in the park that we've chosen over the last 40 plus years of guiding out here as kind of highlight areas that are incredibly scenic and beautiful, and also great staging grounds for different hikes or activities. We're never going to take you somewhere ugly or, in the bushes where you can't see anything. All of our spots are specifically chosen because they're really awesome. So we have a couple ways that you can access the backcountry or kind of get further out. One thing that's not on the slide, but Sam mentioned earlier, is our rafting trip. Rafting trip starts in McCarthy, ends up way out in the middle of nowhere, 17 miles away from town in the wilderness. That's a great way to access the backcountry in a single day, and then we fly back to town. We also offer fly-in hikes or fly-in paddling trips. These are single day adventures where we fly into the backcountry, hike or paddle for the day, and then we fly back that same day. Now, flying in a bush plane is typically a big ticket item. It's a little bit more expensive than some of our other trips, and that's really because of the cost of avgas. It's expensive to fly, but it's incredibly worth it if your budget allows. The sights that you see, the views of this enormous terrain from the air are really spectacular and really kind of give you that perspective of the enormity of this place. Not to mention, you often fly past or around features that you couldn't really access otherwise, like the Stairway Icefall, the largest icefall in the world, or Mount Blackburn, or some of these high altitude peaks that, unless you're a very capable mountaineer, you're never going to get out there. You might also fly over these beautiful glacial rivers that, unless you're a capable rafter, you're never going to get out there any other way. On our fly-in hikes and paddling day trips, you're not likely to see anyone else out there. You get to enjoy this location in solace, which is really, really awesome and pretty unique, I'd say, for a national park. Get it all to yourself for a day. We also offer multi-day hiking and backpacking and rafting trips. So if you have more time and you enjoy camping or want to try to enjoy it, you can join us for a longer trip. Longer trips, just inevitably, you get to see a lot more and you're out there for a longer time. Some of our trips are just 2 or 3 days long, all the way to 8-day backpacking trips. And our longest trip is a 15-day river trip where you start in the heart of the park and you end up way out on the coast. So if you're up for a bigger adventure, you can sign up for a call with me on our website. There's going to be a ton of links to it, but up in the top left is also always a link to schedule a call with the expedition coordinator, and we can talk about what would be the best way to get out into the backcountry for you.
All right, so you're planning your visit, but maybe you've got a lot of flexibility and you want to know what's the best time to visit. Couple different options. Our season is from May to September, so you've got to work within those months. We kind of start at the end of May and close at the beginning of September. May is quiet. The mosquitoes are starting to come out, but typically not too bad yet. And the weather's a little bit cooler. Depending on the season, we might still have some snow on the ground. So if you're driving, that is something to keep in mind. June is starting to become summer. Flowers are starting to come out. It's a lot sunnier. We're into midnight sun season. The solstice is typically on or right around June 21st. So that's a unique experience. A lot of people want to come up for that time to, say they saw the midnight sun. So if you're interested in that, June is the time to do it. Mosquitoes are in full swing, so be ready for that. They're our unofficial state bird. Make sure you've got bug spray on you, and head net is recommended. I think they even make shirts now if you really hate them or if you react poorly to them. Keep that in mind. And we start to have more of those fly-in destinations opening up because the snow is melting out in the backcountry. July is our warmest time. Also another sunny time. More flowers are blooming, like anywhere else. These are going to go in stages, and your guide will be able to tell you about what you're seeing in bloom. And it's also a popular time to come because of the 4th of July. So any of our folks coming from Alaska, Anchorage, this is the time that they typically do it. There's a big celebration in McCarthy. One of the local business owners puts on a parade, has a bunch of classic 4th of July games like tug of war. I think there's usually a pie eating contest. It's a lot of fun. And we close for the morning of 4th of July to let our guides experience that. So July is a great time to come. And August, one huge perk, mosquitoes are starting to disappear. This kind of happens at the end of July too. Changing colors will start to happen later in August. Darker nights, which can be fun to experience. The skies out here are just really beautiful with the stars starting to come out. And it is a rainier month, so that's good to keep in mind. If you can only come in August, it's still a great time to visit. You just will want to have your rain gear with you. Our rain is really more of a Seattle drizzle. It can be pretty steady to get you pretty wet, but it's not like a full downpour. Like anyone from, I saw one person from Florida, you're not going to get a full-blown thunderstorm where your front yard is getting flooded. So nothing like that. September is a great time as well. It's quiet, gets a lot colder, so you'll want some extra layers, but the fall colors are really brilliant. We get a lot of bright yellows and burnt oranges, so nice to experience that. And a chance of seeing the northern lights with it getting dark out earlier and earlier.
And in terms of how much time you need to experience Wrangell St. Elias, well, I mean, Sam, you lived out here year-round for the last 6 years. Do you feel like you've had enough time out here?
No, there's always more to do. To scratch the surface.
That's right. There's always so much more to do and see out here. So just kind of depends on how much time you have. I would say if you're going to join us for a few day trips or just kind of want a taste of the park, 2 to 3 days is a good minimum. The reason being is that it takes a long time to get out here. And so you want to make that time worthwhile. 2 to 3 days, you can cover some of the kind of highlights of the area. We, on our website, we can throw you a link in a sec, but we have some adventure packages where we've grouped together some of our most popular day trips, and they are a 2 and a 3 day adventure package. If you want to go into the backcountry or do some camping, I'd recommend a week minimum. Most of our trips are 5-ish days long, and then giving you a couple extra days to experience the McCarthy Kennecott area. Now, I totally get it. You're trying to see all of Alaska in 2 weeks. I've heard it before. You only have one day. What do? You can still come out here just for a single day. We'll talk about that in just a sec on our how to get here kind of transportation options. But one thing to look into is Wrangell Mountain Air, that local air taxi. We partner with them to offer actually 2 different single day package trips where you fly in for the day, you do a glacier hike or a historic town tour with us, and then you fly back in that same day. So it can be done.
All right, so how do you get here? One big way is driving. So if you want to drive yourself, there are rental vehicles that you can use. There are kind of limited options because the McCarthy Road is a 60-mile gravel road. Not all rental companies allow their vehicles on that stretch of road. And that goes for the Denali Highway as well. So if any of you are planning a big Alaska trip and you're wanting to hit, McCarthy and try the Denali Highway, those are 2 stretches of gravel roads that only a handful of companies allow their vehicles on. So that's broken down in our transportation tab that Anya had linked to previously. A couple of the ones I know are Go North allows their vehicles on those gravel roads, 4x4 rental, and Midnight Sun. These things can change, so check with your rental. If you're not sure, read your contract. If you go down the road and your car's not allowed down it, you can get in some pretty big trouble, so be cautious there. And RVs are kind of similar. Some RVs are allowed down the road, and others are not. So just make sure you're reading your contract and knowing where you can and can't go within the state. If you are driving down the McCarthy Road, come with a full tank of gas. There is a gas provider now at the end of the road, but just in case they're out of gas or not available for some reason, you want to be as self-sufficient as possible. There are like a couple outhouses along the road, but really nowhere to stop along the way for services. So good to come prepared. And a full-size spare tire as well. The road is in better shape than it used to be if you've read any scary articles online, but there are still a lot of potholes. If you're going a little too fast, hit it a little too hard, you can get a flat. So make sure you know how to change a tire and that it's a full-size one to get you the rest of the way in and out. All right. So let's say your rental doesn't let you go down the McCarthy Road, but you still want to come in. There are van shuttle options. And these van shuttle options can pick up in a variety of areas. So there is a van shuttle called Overflow Transit, and they pick up in Anchorage and bring people all the way into McCarthy. They have a set schedule, so definitely check online on what they have available and see if that works for your itinerary. And that is a great way to get from Anchorage if you don't want to have to do any of the driving yourself. Outside of Overflow, let's say you are going to drive your rental to the end of the paved highway system, which is in Chitna. There is the Kennecott shuttle, and they start picking up in Chitna. They also pick up in Copper Center, and they pick up in Glen Allen as well. So we've got a map pulled up now. If you can see those points, Anya's using the mouse to point those out. But that can be helpful if you're staying in Copper Center and you just want to, catch the shuttle in for the day and then head back out. They offer daily shuttle services. And again, that's Kennecott Shuttle. They also can drive you in. You can stay a night or two, and then they can drive you back out. So check with them on their specific timings for that, but that's a really popular option for folks, is to utilize those van shuttles. All right, let's say you don't want to drive down that road. It's going to kill your back, or you're just not interested in driving anymore. You want to try and squeeze in a bush flight at some point. there are a couple ways to get to us by plane. And similarly to the van shuttle, you can get to us by plane from Anchorage. So we get our mail by plane, and so you can use our mail plane to get out here, and that is serviced by Reeve Air and Copper Valley Air. And again, that's on that transportation page, so take a look at that. They basically offer a flight every day of the week except for Sunday at this point. We only get mail Monday and Thursday, so the other plane is just a standard transportation option, but that is a great way to get from Anchorage out to us. If you're flying, an important thing to keep in mind is that weather can really impact when you're able to fly and how far you make it out. So try not to schedule anything too tight around when you're going to be flying as your transportation option. But let's say you're going to drive most of the way and then you're going to get to Chitina. And again, you're stuck at the McCarthy Road, but you don't want to take that van shuttle. Wrangell Mountain Air, again, our local air taxi, they offer daily scheduled flights from Chitina into McCarthy and back out. And so you can check their website for all those listed times. That's a great option to kind of see the park from the sky. Basically, you're getting a little bit of a flight see, and the pilots are going to talk to you about what you're seeing along the way too. There are baggage limits if you're flying. Typically, you can't take more than about 35 pounds. That varies depending on the provider, so make sure you check with them. And they're very strict on that. They'll also ask you your weight when you book a seat with them, so don't be offended. It's really important for configuring their flights since the planes are so small.
And on certain days of the week, you can drive into Gulkana, right here, just north of Glen Allen, and Copper Valley Air Service might be doing a scheduled run into McCarthy, and you can fly in from there. So another way, especially if you're doing the Parks Highway, driving in from Fairbanks or Denali, or driving down to Valdez. Sorry, oops, move the map. Driving down to Valdez, you can drive out through Gulkana and fly in from there.
And a lot of folks ask if we can arrange their logistics. And if you're doing day trips with us, that's not something that we'll do. You know, we're not going to book your shuttle or your flight, but we'll work with you to tell you what options work best for your itinerary. So feel free to call in if you're just feeling overwhelmed with planning, and we're happy to point you in the right direction. We just won't actually book that for you. If you're doing a multi-day trip with us, though, we will work with you a little bit more, and we offer trip packages where we take care of those logistics for you and add that cost to your trip. So that's something that Anya can talk to you more about if you schedule a call with her, if you're interested in our multi-day backcountry trips. So keep that in mind too.
And I realize we're kind of coming up on the hour mark. I guess we had more to say than I anticipated, but we're almost through our slides, just 2 more to go, 2 or 3 more to go, and then we'll be on to our FAQs.
We have a lot to say. It's a big park. All right, so here is the area of Kennecott and McCarthy for those of you who haven't been here before. I won't be able to move the mouse around to show you what you're seeing, so try and stick with me. We'll kind of start in the bottom left corner. You can see there is a West Side Visitor Center and the Base Camp campground. That is where you're going to be parking your car. Again, no vehicle traffic is allowed inside of the towns of McCarthy, Kennecott. So you'll park your car there, and then your lodge will pick you up if you're staying in the McCarthy, Kennecott area, or we provide transportation if you're coming in for one of our glacier activities. We don't provide transportation for our mill tours, but there are local shuttles for that. So I'll get more into that later. So we've got that campground. You can see the footbridge crossing over the Kennecott River. And then there's a little shuttle bus there that denotes a shuttle stop. So keep that in mind as we look through this map. You can see the roadway starts to take you into town. It's about a half mile from that footbridge into McCarthy. And you can see McCarthy in the bottom right-hand corner there. There are a couple different food options in McCarthy. There's the potato. That's a crowd favorite, really delicious. It opens May 29th, if you're wondering. And then there's also the Saloon, which is a bar, tons of music that they do there. And there's also the Mercantile. So again, we encourage you to come with all your own supplies, but if you're missing something, go to the Mercantile for that. And another little shuttle bus there that you can see. So they have that shuttle in McCarthy. Let's head north up the road. You can see a little plane on the right side of the map. That is going to be the airstrip. So that's where Wrangell Mountain Air flies in and out of. Continuing on north, we get up to Kennecott. So that shuttle bus right at the start of town. We've got our office, second building on the left. The Kennecott Glacier Lodge is a really popular option for people to stay at. And if you keep going through Kennecott, you're going to hit all the trails that are up that we've discussed, our alpine hikes and our Route Glacier Trail. And you can see there on the left as well, the glaciers. And you can see the Route Glacier, those two fingers of white ice, and then the kind of bumpy stuff around it is part of the Kennecott Glacier that rams into it from the side. So you can see this map is not to scale, not even close, but it gives you a good sense of what the area has. Those local shuttle options, there are two. There is the Coppertown Shuttle, and that is run by the McCarthy Lodge or Maud Johnson's Hotel down in McCarthy. Check with them for their shuttle service. They haven't given us their set schedule yet for 2025, but at minimum, they operate an hourly shuttle that departs between McCarthy and Kennecott, and they usually run on demand from the footbridge to help get you into town. There is also the Blackburn Heritage Shuttle. They pick up in front of the Potato, and they also will stop at the footbridge and bring folks up to Kennecott. So those are your two options there. They are at a cost. So Blackburn Heritage is $5 a ticket, and the Coppertown Shuttle is typically $20 for an unlimited pass, which can be really beneficial if you're staying multiple days in the area. You can also bring your bike to get around. That's a great way to move around and not have to worry about the local shuttle service. The distance between McCarthy and Kennecott is about 5 miles. It's a steady uphill, so you'll notice that a lot on the way up to Kennecott, but on the way back down, it's very nice on a bike. Should you bring your four-wheeler? No, technically. So you're not allowed or not supposed to cross the footbridge in a four-wheeler. Plenty of folks do it, but it's not recommended. There's not really any public parking in McCarthy. There's a small public day parking area in Kennecott, but it's really utilized by locals and can fill up really quickly, especially on the 4th of July. So you'll get a lot of flack from local businesses if you start parking in random areas. And motored ATVs or those motorbikes that some people use are technically not allowed to drive through Kennecott. So if you do decide to do this, just keep that in mind, and please be very respectful. A lot of people live out here in the summer. Dogs and kids are free range, so you'll want to drive really slowly if you do choose to do that option, but just keep in mind it's not recommended.
Okay, we have a couple of our most common FAQs that we pulled to start us off on our Q&A. Feel free to throw your Qs into the chat, and we'll kind of mark them off for our next Q&A slide. But just to hit these top hitters real quick, what are the temps like? You know, this is a kind of a loaded question because your idea of warm is going to be very different if you live in Anchorage or you are coming from Florida. And so I would say, in the summer, it does get warm. We are on glaciers. We are in the mountains, but it's not uncommon to be on the glacier in the mountains in a t-shirt. In July, our warmest month, we can get temps into the 70s and 80s. I've seen it hit 90 before. That was a really, really hot summer, but I would call that scorching for up here. More commonly, really comfortable 70s and 80s warm temps. In the cooler months during the day, we're probably in the high 60s. And at night in the evening, even in July, it's going to start to get pretty chilly, especially in August when the sun actually goes down at night. So that might actually feel like winter to you, depending on where you're coming from. I would be prepared with a variety of layers, anything from a tank top and t-shirt all the way to like a puffy jacket like Sam is wearing, or a fleece sweater like I'm wearing. Something where it's not uncommon to experience all 4 seasons in a single day out here.
All right, can I bring my dog? Yeah, you can definitely bring your dog. McCarthy is a very dog-friendly town. The majority of dogs out here aren't on leashes, so keep that in mind. In McCarthy, you're not required to leash your dog, but in Kennecott and on any of the trails you are. The dogs are not allowed inside of the historic buildings in Kennecott, and they're not really tour friendly. So if you plan on bringing your dog, plan your tours where you can maybe leave them behind in your RV for a little bit and then come back down. There's not a kennel service here, but occasionally a local teen will start an impromptu dog watching service. So once we know about that, we'll let you know if you call in and ask. But at this point, we don't know of any options. So just plan on having a spot to keep your dog while you're on a tour, or making sure you keep them leashed while you're exploring the area. And what is the condition of the McCarthy Road? So again, that's that 60-mile gravel road that starts in Chittenden and takes you all the way to the Kennecott River right before you get to McCarthy. And it is variable. In general, you can expect potholes, a little bit of washboarding. There are some narrow sections of the road where you might need to stop and let another vehicle pass. And the shoulders of the road can be soft, especially in a rainier season. So if you are waiting to let someone pass, just make sure you're not being too polite to where you're too close to that shoulder and maybe your car gets stuck on that. So those are some of the main hazards. One of the biggest hazards, I would say, are just other drivers. You're typically not going to want to go more than 35 miles per hour, especially if you don't have gravel road experience, as there are some blind corners along the drive. Many people don't follow that, and so they can often be the most hazardous part, along with animals. They're not necessarily paying attention to you, so watch out for any moose that might be crossing the road as well. But in general, it's in a lot better shape than it used to be. So again, if you're seeing any articles online that are telling you don't drive it, be aware. There used to be railroad spikes in the road, but a local family cleaned that up a number of years ago. So we haven't heard of that being an issue. My dad in particular didn't like the road because it hurt his back. So if you have any back pain, maybe get something to support it. But otherwise, it's kind of a fun adventure to say you survived the McCarthy Road. All right. And then is there cell service or Wi-Fi in town? The only cell service that works reliably is Verizon. So if you've got that, it'll work for you. Wi-Fi, extremely limited. Your lodging will probably have Wi-Fi for you, especially if you're at Kennecott Glacier Lodge, Ma Johnson's Hotel, or the McCarthy Guest House. Those all have Wi-Fi. A lot of the cabins might not. So if you're tempted to go to a local business and ask for Wi-Fi, don't count on it. Our bandwidth is extremely small out here. And, with us needing to process payments and things like that, we just can't really share it with folks. So you might be off the grid for a couple days, which is part of the charm for being out here. So good to know if you're going to be off the grid. So again, if you've got Verizon, you'll be all set. If you don't, maybe have a backup plan for connecting with family.
What about the bears? Big question for both Alaskans and non-Alaskans too. We are in bear terrain. We have black bears and grizzly bears that live in the Kennecott Valley and in Wrangell St. Elias National Park at large. These animals are still very wild. What that means is they have enormous territories, and it's usually very easy for them to avoid us. They don't have much interest in us. A lot of the time, they're actually scared of us. None of those horror stories that you hear of in Yellowstone National Park or your Yosemite, where they are opening van doors or, unzipping your tent or anything like that. The bears out here really want nothing to do with you. And if you practice good etiquette, that should remain the case. Now, occasionally, especially when the berries start to come in, they come down a little closer to town, to the Root Glacier Trail, and start to forage for berries. Berries are their primary motivation for being down here, not you, and hopefully not your snacks either. So make sure that you practice good etiquette to keep our bears wild and be able to enjoy them, at a distance. What that means is keeping your food safe. It's actually illegal in the national park, and you can get fined if the rangers find your food or stored improperly or left out at your campsite or somewhere on a bench or along the trail. And while you're hiking, make noise. Again, if you're hiking down the Root Glacier Trail, it's a very well trafficked trail. There will probably inevitably already be noise happening, but just even having a good conversation on the trail is enough noise to let the bears know that you're there so you don't startle them. If you're going to be hiking up to the old mines, the Alpine hikes up to Bonanza Mine or Jumbo Mine, those trails are less trafficked and there is often bear activity on there. So just make sure that you're making noise. If you see a bear, keep your distance, maybe wait for it to pass or even retreat a little bit so it's not afraid to move past you. I don't recommend bringing guns out here. I know Alaskans love their guns, and I certainly don't want to take them away from you. You're going to see guns when you visit McCarthy or when you visit Alaska, period. Unlike other areas in Alaska that have serious bear problems, we don't here. And so of course, you're welcome to bring your gun, but I don't find that you necessarily need it to enjoy some of these more popular hikes. That part is kind of up to you. Also, just keep in mind that guns are not allowed in federal buildings. So if you are going to do the Milltown tour through Kennecott, you will be entering some federally owned buildings and guns aren't allowed in there. So just make sure you have a way to store that properly while you're doing that tour. All right. Oh, more FAQs. We'll get to our Q&A here next, but again, I think it's in your lower left-hand corner is the link to our FAQ page if you want to visit that kind of for reference visually. All right, I've got 2 questions so far for our Q&A, but load us up. We're ready to go.
Well, as we transition to that, I'll just add for our drivers, a great resource is the Alaska Department of Transportation website. If you go to that page, the first thing it loads to should be a map, and you can plan your route on that. There's a lot of road construction that happens in Alaska in the summer, since that's the only time they can really do it. So there might be closures and things like that, and that's the best way to find out what kind of closures or conditions you're going to find along the way. So Alaska's Department of Transportation, definitely check that out. All right. Leslie. So Leslie is asking, if we already have a reservation with you, will we hear from you with any more specific information a few days before arrival for our excursion, or do we just show up that day? So when you book, you get a confirmation from us. If you didn't receive a confirmation, you'll want to check your spam folder and then check in with us and we can resend it, make sure we have the right email address. That confirmation is going to have all of the specific information you need for when and where to meet us. Because again, if you're down in McCarthy, we'll meet you at a specific location a little bit earlier than the start time of 9 o'clock. So you'll want to make sure you're in the right spot at the right time. And it also has a gear list in there for you. So definitely good to print that out if you won't have service while you're in the area so that you can reference that once you're here. We'll send you a reminder a couple days before saying, hey, make sure you're going to meet us in the right place, reference your confirmation, and fill out your risk form ahead of time. But that's it. It's a pretty sparse reminder email, really wanting to just refer you to that confirmation. So if you don't get that or you're getting a little worried, you're not sure where to go, just give us a call and we'll help you out with that.
And it sounds like you're staying at the Kennecott Glacier Lodge. That's definitely one of the easiest places to stay in town because the lodge is right across the street from our Kennecott office. You will probably just meet us right across the street at 9 a.m. for any activity that you do with us. All right, James is asking, can you go into any of the mines? Ooh, adventurous spirit, James. So unfortunately, all the mine entrances have been closed by the National Park Service. There are a couple that are on private land, but the people that own them have also closed them. And actually, they have some like geologists and other researchers that go in there occasionally to access that and kind of learn a little bit more about the mountain. But the tunnels themselves have been completely abandoned for about 100 years. If somehow you did find your way in, I would be very careful. I would not recommend it. That is just asking for collapse. But that said, when you do visit those locations of Jumbo Mine and Bonanza Mine up on the hillside where those trails go up to, you can find a lot of artifacts that used to be inside the tunnels that were brought out before they were closed up. And they're just kind of scattered around the mountainside up there.
All right. Then we've got a question from Vikas. I'm very sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. Question in general, as I'm planning my trip to Alaska, is it worth traveling to Denali this year, considering the road closure that opens on or after 2026? I unfortunately cannot say one way or the other. I'm just not really familiar with what will still be accessible or inaccessible. So I'd recommend getting in touch with their visitor center directly and seeing what you can find out. I'd say if you're planning another Alaska trip, it might just be worth waiting so you can get, enough out of it. But if this is your only Alaska trip, it's likely still worth going up there just to see that different landscape. But again, you'll want to check with their visitor center to be sure on that.
How large are the planes and how many people fit in a plane? Asks Anne. Great question. A lot of the bush planes that we're working with, Wrangell Mountain Air flies, are anywhere from 1 passenger, but more commonly 3 passenger to 5 or 6 passenger aircraft. So really, really tiny. Usually everybody or almost everybody in the plane gets a window seat, which is kind of great. If you're doing those flights with Reeve Air and Copper Valley from Anchorage all the way to McCarthy, you might be on a slightly bigger plane. I think it's an 8 or 9 passenger plane that they have, but still pretty small aircraft in the grand scheme of things. Super fun. And they all count as a bush plane.
All right, looks like that's, oh, here we go, Leslie, you've got another one. If we booked 2 different day trips, glacier hike and rafting, do we need to do waivers for both or just one waiver? Really great question. Thank you for saying which activities you're doing, because that does make a difference. So any of our hiking based activities, let's say you're doing a glacier hike, a mill tour, and an alpine hike, you can fill out 1 waiver and that'll cover you for all 3 activities. It's better to fill out the waiver for the activity you're doing first, because that'll show up in our system and we'll be able to track that a little bit easier. But 1 will cover you for all 3 of those hiking activities. But you will need a different activity for any of our water-based activities. So if you're doing hiking and rafting, we'll need 1 for that glacier hike and then another for rafting. Or if you're doing the lake paddle, 1 for the lake paddle and then 1 for the mill tour. And once you complete that waiver, it's automatically sent to us. So we'll know that you've done it.
Awesome. Well, unless you guys got any other questions, we'll let you go and get back to celebrating your moms today. Oh, Vikas, is there an adventure package combining full day glacier hikes and ice caves as well? There is not. We have our 3-day adventure package can include the full day glacier hike. Our ice cave activity is on a private basis only. It's one of the few activities that's like that because the ice caves are so challenging to get to and a fairly risky, kind of dangerous activity in and of themselves. They're a smaller enclosure, hard to get to. We only want to manage small, cohesive groups for these. So these are only going to be offered on a private basis, just you and your party. And that's why we can't combine them in a package deal. But you can find our full day raft and flight sea, the half day and full day glacier hikes, ice climbing, and the Kennecott Milltown tour in our 2 and 3 day adventure packages. Oh, Chuck, great question. Which route does Mount Blackburn climbers use and which glacier for access? We actually climb the northwest ridge of Mount Blackburn, and that's best accessed from the Nebezna ice field to the north of the mountain. So we usually fly in out there to kind of the back of the mountain from what you would see from Kennecott. Just so you know, the first ascent was actually done up the south face by a woman named Dora Keene back in 1912. And she's the only one we know of to have ever climbed or even attempted the south face via the Kennecott Glacier. Has the Kennecott Glacier receded? Whoa, you were up there in 1979. How cool.
That's awesome.
Yes, the Kennecott Glacier has receded. In general, most glaciers in the world are only receding now, and that's because we're not in an ice age. During an ice age, the glaciers grow. When the ice age is over, thankfully, we're not in an ice age right now. So the glaciers are in their long process of receding. And the Park Service has some really great information about kind of, and some visuals for seeing the changes in the glacier and kind of the visible landscape from the town. One of the probably the biggest changes you would notice if you visited today is the size of the glacial lake at the toe of the Kennecott Glacier. Back in 1979, it was hardly there. Today, it's quite large and it's creeping up the sides of both sides of the Kennecott Glacier, getting larger every year.
And the volume of the glacier, that's one thing. Even on the Kennecott Milltown tour, we show you some historic photos that give us a really good sense of what it looked like back then. And the height of the Kennecott Glacier is just substantially taller than what it is now. So it's really cool to kind of see that difference and have that captured.
Yep, we started our business, or well, Bob Jacobs started this business in 1978, and our office in Kennecott is actually in the old coal bunker of Kennecott. So it's a little bit of a chilly, dark building.
We got rid of the coal though. So.
Yeah, looks a little bit nicer now. All right, well, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you so much again for joining us, especially the 26 of you that have stuck around for the full hour and a half. Got some great questions. We hope to see you this summer. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email us. You can contact us via form on our website. Give us a call. We'll be on the other end of the line. All right, take care, everybody.
Bye, you guys.
Bye.